ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति देवैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। So yesterday we saw the verse where the Lord said that the whole universe comes from Him through the Maya, and this whole universe is made up of three gunas: Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. And all these three gunas in different permutations and combinations make up the universe. So everything that comes, everything that is seen in this universe, it is an expression of the Lord, including the so-called evil, bad thoughts, everything. But the source has to be only one, which is the infinite source. The source can't be two different sources. That good comes from the divine and the evil comes from the devil. It can't happen like that. That's very preliminary way of thinking. But when we understand that the universe is infinite and appearance of that infinite Lord, then it has to be understood that the cause is only one. Now, in spite of knowing that the whole universe comes from the Lord, we get entangled in very many things of the world, forgetting the source. And so here is one very beautiful verse where he says that not only that the whole world has come from me, but also understand that they are in me and I am not in them. So were you able to think about it? That how is it that they are in me and I am not in them? How can a mud say that all the pots are in me but I am not in the pots? Then the pot will not have existence. The effect must be pervaded by the cause. And if you remove the cause, effect ceases to exist. So how is it that everything is in the Lord but the Lord is not in everything?
Because the Lord created everything.
So He must be there, no? He can't be sitting separate. He is not like a potter sitting separate. He is the infinite reality, so He has to be all pervasive, He has to be everything.
There is no attachment.
There is no attachment, okay. So the example we have to take here is not the example of mud and the pot, but the example of the light and what it illumines. So the light can say that all this is in me, but I am not in them. Why? Because it illumines. Even when nothing is here, it illumines. Even when everything is here, it illumines. And the beauty is that the illuminer is never affected by the illumined. So whether there are good things happening here or there are bad things happening here, light is not affected. Its job is to illumine. The rope and the snake, let us say. The rope can always say that all the snakes are in me, but I am not in the snake. Why? Because in the rope, we see the snake, actually speaking. Because snake is a substratum. And not seeing the snake not seeing the rope as the rope, then we are seeing it as a snake. So this statement is to make us aware that pure consciousness is the substratum of the whole universe. It is not affected by the universe. It has not produced the universe, just like the rope has actually not produced the snake. But still I am seeing the snake, then what do I say? If you are seeing the snake, then the cause is only the rope. Same way we are seeing the world. And we saw in the first session that infinite by definition is changeless. It cannot produce anything. It is infinite, beyond time, beyond space, beyond object. So it cannot produce anything, and yet we see this whole world. Then from where did this world come? So when he says matta eveti tan vidhi, from me all this has come, that creation has to be understood as an illusion, as a projection, not as a pot which is being produced from the mud, where the actual production is happening. More easier example is to understand the waker and the dreamer. The waker who is lying on the bed is gone to sleep, and now he is dreaming, has created the whole dream world. So the waker can always say that all this is in me, but I am not in it. When it is said I am not in it, what does it mean? Waker as a waker is not in it. Waker is lying quietly, is a substratum. But who is the dreamer and what is the dream world? That whole dream world is nothing but a projection of the waker only. So the waker can always say that this whole dream world came from me, and they are in me, I am not in them. So if we understand that relationship of the superimposition and the substratum, this becomes very clear. And why should I know this? For two reasons. One is whenever I see anything around me, I should remember that this is an appearance of the Lord only. So my mind will go towards the Lord. That's the only way to wake up to that truth.
The sky and the stars, the sky and the...
No, that example won't be appropriate. Because the sky and the stars, again there is no connection actually. In the waker and dreamer example, the waker only is appearing as the dreamer. That's why for this, actually even the light and the illumined is not appropriate example. The best example for this is only the waker and the dreamer. Because the waker only is the dreamer and the whole dream world. No difference is there. So today our cause of sorrow and suffering is I see myself as a limited being, separate from the world, and I am constantly challenged by the world. Constantly I have to prove myself. Constantly I am living in fear and insecurity. Constantly attached to things which make me feel happy. Because the sense of difference or duality is the basis. But when we understand this, we say that everything has come from the Lord. Then how has it come from the Lord? Has the Lord disappeared? No. He is only appearing as the whole universe. So when I understand this relationship, that's why Gurudev calls it as a relationless relationship. In his talk you will see that. That there is a relationship between the creator and the creation. That the whole creation came from the creator. But at the same time there is no relationship. Why? Because nothing of the creation can even touch or affect the creator. Not a single part of the dream world can ever affect the waker. Why? Because the waker is the substratum. Not a single part of the movie scene can affect the screen. Because it's only projected on the screen. Screen is the substratum. Nothing that is happening here will ever affect the light. Light will remain as it is. So if this relationship is understood, that this is actually the relationship between the creation and the creator. So one is it makes our mind go towards the creator because we have taken the creation to be so real, and that's why we are attached to it and we have forgotten the creator. And Vedanta is saying that creator is actually you in your true nature. Identifying with one little dream character, we are suffering here. So when a dream character realizes that this whole dream world has come from the waker, whenever the person thinks about anything in the dream world, the mind will always go towards the waker. So that's the first benefit of understanding this. And second benefit is I can remain completely unaffected by anything that happens around me. Because my nature is that consciousness, that waker I am. The dream character always should remember that I am that waker from which this whole universe came. And this entire universe is only an appearance in me. So none of this can ever affect me. It can affect the body, it can affect the mind, it can affect the intellect. I am a sakshi, I am a witness. Nothing ever touches me. So that is the way to remain completely balanced, unaffected, fearless. No matter what happens, can the snake ever bite that rope? Snake can do nothing to that rope. But how strange it is that today it is like that in our case. That today the rope is getting scared of the snake. That the snake will bite me. That's what we are doing. No? Oh, this world, my God, it is so difficult and it is so dangerous, and what all is happening, and I am very scared. But that is because I am identified with one little equipment. If I know my true nature, that I am the source from which the whole universe came, why is there any fear? That's what the 7th chapter is, and that's true devotion. Bhakti is this. To realize that the relationship between the creation and the creator is of a superimposition and the substratum. It is not of a pot and the potter. It is not of milk and the curd. It is not of a wave and ocean also. Because wave is a small part and ocean is the totality. Many people want to live in that. How much ever Vedanta we learn, we still maintain, after all I am a part and that is the whole. That's the real, no, Swamiji. No, that is not the reality. The reality is you are the whole in the true nature. Identifying with one little part, then we are saying, okay, I am a part and that is the whole. And the idea of saying that also so that I drop my attachment to this small part, that I am this. In the glory of the whole, I lose myself. For that, this relationship of part and whole is given. But we are very happy. I am one part, that is the whole. That's only a step, intermediary step, to make me drop my attachment to this small part. That considering that which is the whole, which is so glorious, what is a small part? So that false ego and the vanity that we have goes. To realize what? This, that I am actually the whole. So this shloka is one of the very, very important verses of the Gita. And in our personal life, we can always practice this. Any thought that comes into the mind, we either get carried away by it, we go elated by it, or we get depressed by it, or we are overwhelmed by it. At any such time I can tell myself, they are in me, I am not in them. One of the greatest persecutions in the world is the thought persecution. We are persecuted by our own thoughts. And they are not even real. That's the sad part. It's just a thought. It just arises because of perception or because of past conditioning. It's just a thought. And I give reality to it and then I am scared. Or I get carried away by it in a positive way or a negative way, either ways. It's just a thought. Like the body has some sensation. Mind has a feeling. Intellect has a thought. That is the nature of that body, mind and intellect. But why should I identify with them? But identifying with them, then I get completely overwhelmed. So now, we will see this small 10-minute clip on this verse by Gurudev. Very beautifully explains this.
Over my lower nature and higher nature together constitute the womb. So far he said that this my lower nature and higher nature.
What happened?
So far he said that this my lower nature and higher nature together constitute the womb from which everything in the universe of names and forms arisen. Womb in their sense, where it is the springboard, it is the soul, it is the spring. Just as all waves of any dimension and power and shape, all of them are the womb is the ocean. Similarly, for this universe of names and forms is the source. Not only the outer form, but even our inner life of thoughts, the different types of thoughts, also matta, from me only.
ये चैव सात्विका भावाः राजसास्तामसाश्च ये मत्त एवेति तान् विद्धि न त्वहं तेषु ते मयि.
Also, ye chaiva, even these, or sattvic, rajasic and tamasic thoughts arising, the good, the bad, the indifferent thoughts that rise. Because those three are the three gunas, three moods of the mind of every individual when sattvic, rajasic and tamasic vasanas express. So it includes all possibility of thoughts that can rise in the human mind. All of them are mattaha, from me alone. Eve to tanviti, please understand, Arjuna, that all thoughts, good, bad and indifferent, are rising from me alone. So the evil thoughts are also arising from you. Because he alone is a suffering. They are evil because they are molested by the ego and egocentric desires. In your bosom, these two are not in him. He, the waves of his dynamics of expressing through your mind, because of your ego and egocentric desires, it becomes good, bad or indifferent. These are the expressions of the past inhibitions in you. So the quality of texture is your contribution. But the thought arising is a disturbance in the consciousness. And the uniqueness is expressed in the form of a koan, a self-contradictory statement. Natu aham teshu. I am not indam, they are in me. How can that be? They are in me, but I am not in them. This indicates a relationless relationship between the infinite consciousness and all your mental and physical disturbance. They are in me, I am not in them. The dream is mine, but I am not the dreamer, isn't it? On waking up you realize that as a dreamer you had leprosy. On waking up you have not to have the treatment necessary. I was not. And yet, where did the dream stay? How did the dream function? Because of me. In me was the dream, but that dream cannot contaminate me. I am immaculate. In the dream I may commit a murder, and that when I wake up I am not a murderer. In the dream I may starve and die, but when I wake up I have got indigestion in me. I had such a heavy dinner, and that created the dream. Food. They are in me, I am not in them. All thoughts. So you are sitting in the seat of meditation. Everyone complains. Some dirty thoughts are coming. So what? Good thoughts are coming. So what? I have no concentration, my mind is running here and there. So what? You are not the thought. Thoughts are rising in you. They are in me. I am not in them. Even the end of philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita you don't understand. But if you practice this, you are already a master in the world outside, isn't it? I have got bad temper suddenly. What do you mean bad temper? I was suddenly my thoughts are very angry. So when you feel that anger coming and molesting you, tell yourself, they are in me. I am not in them. And that will not touch you. Okay? But when the anger thought comes, you hug it. And you become angry. You are not the mind. The mind is fluctuating because of your grace, your blessings. Without contact with you, the consciousness, mind cannot think or produce the next thought. All thoughts are from me, there where I am not. Consciousness is not there in you. In the state of unconscious, there are no thoughts. Good, bad, and good. And even when the thoughts are there, have that discrimination to understand that they are in me, but I am not in them. I cannot be conditioned by them. Waves are in me, but the smashing, stormy, mountainous waves cannot disturb and touch the ocean. Waves cannot be where ocean is now. All waves are nothing but oceanic water in motion. Every wave is pervaded by the waters of the ocean. The waves can destroy the ships floating on the surface, can crush mountains on the side, on the beach, can pulverize rocks, but it can do no harm to the ocean. The waves are born, they grow, they decay, they die, they disappear. These are all the nature of the wave. Ocean is not born when the wave is born. Ocean is not growing when the waves are growing. Ocean is not decaying when the waves decay. Ocean has not disappeared when the wave disappears. The destinies of the waves, the autobiography of each wave is being played out in the ocean. But the ocean is not affected by it. In this understanding, sit down. Where are disturbances for the man of contemplation? Early exercises in contemplation. No more can you complain. There can never be any disturbance in contemplation if you have got the knowledge of what you are seeking or searching and what is its relationship with your force.
त्रिभिर्गुणमयैर्
So what Gurudev spoke, very beautiful point about being unaffected by our own thoughts. If we understand this fact that thoughts arise in me, stay in me, they go back in me. So what is me there? Is not the mind. Me there is consciousness. So when we see the world outside, whatever we see around, we remember that all this is an appearance of the Lord. So it takes our mind to that Lord. And when we sit quietly in contemplation, we remember that all this arises in consciousness, stays, dissolves. Consciousness remains unaffected. So whole effort so many people put in the state of contemplation to make the mind blank. That is not required. That's why he said one of the last lines he said is that a contemplator will never have a complaint if there is clear knowledge of what one is seeking or searching. We are not seeking the state of blank, absence of thoughts. We are trying to shift the identification of ourselves. That right now I am identifying myself with the mind. I have to know myself as the consciousness. And the mind cannot know consciousness. Consciousness illumines the mind. So I have to know that I am that consciousness in whom the mind functions, the feelings arise, in whom the thoughts arise. And assert that nature, that my nature is consciousness, and in me all these are, I am not in them. Meaning I am never conditioned by them, never affected by them. Even in their absence, I am. Even if thoughts are there or not there, I am. But without me, the thoughts cannot exist. So that is the relationship between the substratum and the superimposition. The substratum can remain without the superimposition. Superimposition cannot remain without the substratum. The rope can be and actually is without the snake. But the snake cannot be without the rope. So knowing this as my true nature, a person, this is actually called devotion, where one has merged with the Lord. The nature of the Lord is that pure consciousness. Remember we saw that earlier. The higher nature, he says, my higher nature is a pure consciousness, and my lower nature is the eightfold Prakriti, which is manifesting as this whole universe, including the body, mind and intellect. So now this aspect is not known by us, or it is not easily comprehended, because we are under the influence of our own three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. So we go on to this verse number 14, where the Lord explains that this Maya, which is actually these three gunas, is His own power and is very difficult to cross. Let us see. Daivi yesha gunamayi Mama maya duratyaya Mame vaye prapadyante Maya me tam taranti te. So he says, Daivi Yesha Gunamayi. This Maya is a divine power of the Lord. And what is the nature of Maya? Gunamayi, made up of three gunas. Typically, people use the word Maya in very loose context, very casual. When we see the whole world, people say, Swamiji, ye sab Maya hai. Or people think wealth is Maya. People think family is Maya. ये मोह माया में पड़ गए. I am a samsari, I am bound. मोह माया के जाल में फंस गए. But what is Maya actually? Gunamayi. First word is describes Maya is, it is made up of three gunas, sattva, rajas and tamas. Expression of that sattva, rajas and tamas is the whole world, so we say this is also Maya. But this is an effect of Maya actually, this is not Maya. Sattva, rajas and tamas themselves are the nature of Maya, which we cannot perceive until we see their manifestation. So what we are actually seeing is a manifestation of sattva, rajas and tamas, which we are calling as Maya. But actually sattva, rajas and tamas by themselves, the gunas, that is called as Maya. The three moods or temperaments. So Mama, Daivi, Yesha. And this Maya is also Daivi. It is a divine power of the Lord. What does the divine power of the Lord do? On one hand it veils the truth, on the other hand it projects the truth as something else. So non-apprehension and misapprehension, these are two powers of Maya, veiling and projecting. In Vedanta it is called as avaran and vikshep. So the waker has this power to dream, so that capacity to dream is called as Maya. Using that capacity to dream, the waker on one hand gets veiled, and on the other hand that dreaming capacity projects the same waker as a dreamer, and then the dreamer creates a whole world. So in that same way the absolute infinite truth as though is covered and it appears to us as this whole universe. So that Brahman, infinite reality, appears as Ishvara and as the creator of the whole world. And what happens in this? One forgets the reality, one is stuck in the expression, one is stuck in the universe. So he says that this Maya is very, very difficult to cross. Mama Maya Duratyaya. This is my Maya, meaning this power of Maya resides in me, it is not some independent power. Maya cannot function without Bhagavan. So for the devotee is not seeing this as Maya, devotee is seeing this as his glory. So the devotee remains unaffected. We don't see this as his glory, we see this as existing by itself. So then we get attached, we get bound. So he says here that this Maya is very difficult to cross. Now why is this Maya difficult to cross? Because the functioning of the Maya is such that it veils on one hand and it projects on one other hand, and it makes us feel that the projection is real. So we don't even know that it is a projection actually. Like when we are in the dream appears so real to us. Does anybody know in the dream that this is a dream? Swamiji, that movie came, no, Inception, in that person knows. And I'm trying to be like that from that time. And at the end of that movie, one is still confused. What is real? Because the top is still spinning. If you have seen it, you know what I mean. If you have not seen it, don't worry. Anyway, it is unreal. So don't scratch your head. Arey, pata nahi kya hai. That's just example or a creative expression. Please, it is not possible to be aware of the dream. Not possible to know that this is a dream while being in the dream. A hallucinative state is a different point. I am talking about a proper dream. So it is not possible. That's what Maya does. That the veiling is so strong in our mind that we don't even see that there can be something which is divine. Because all around me are some names and forms. I can't understand that there is a formless reality, changeless reality, nameless reality which is behind all this. Like the people who are watching, some movie or some serial. I forgot that person's name. I was just told that some days back. Not that I have seen that. There was some serial, which was coming. Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. In that serial, that one person died. I forgot the name of that person. I was very amused when they told me that. That one character died, some Mihir or Mahek or somebody died. And people were actually having Shok Sabha for him. I don't know if that was true, but that's what I was told. I said, come on, what is this? In that serial, that one character died and you are actually having Shok Sabha out there. But it is like that, because it appears so real. People who are watching the movie and then that hero goes through some pain and difficulty and then they are crying because they don't see the screen. What are they seeing? Movie. But Swamiji, who goes to see the screen? We go to see the movie. That's the limitation of the example. The point is, knowing that this is a screen, I can enjoy the movie better instead of getting identified with the character and then only experiencing the emotion of that one character. So the idea here is that Maya is such an entity that in us the Tamoguna veils the truth, Rajoguna projects a false entity which is Mr. Ego, and then I see this, that this is me. So whatever is happening to this is happening to me. Same way the Tamoguna is veiling the truth outside and projecting the world as real, and so I am thinking this world is real. And so Maya does not allow me to know that I am under the spell of Maya. That's the problem with Maya. And so he says, Duratyaya, this is extremely difficult to cross. But there is one hope, there is one way. He says, Mameva ye prapadyante, whoever surrenders to me, Maya metam tarantite, they will cross this Maya. Meaning what? When we go to the source, the Ishvara, then the power of Ishvara does not affect anymore. Because I have come to the substratum. If I see the screen, then the scene is not going to matter anymore. So now I have seen the screen. This screen is a reality, this movie is just a projection. If I see the rope, then snake does not bother anymore. So those who surrender, this is said in the language of devotion, that those who surrender to the Lord, meaning not that we surrender to the Lord in the temple saying, Bhagavan, tera tujhko arpan kya lage mera, and then come out and continue to live in attachment and everything. It's very strange how we live. We want Brahman. If I give a political example, we want Brahman as the government, but we vote for Maya. That's how we live. Those who vote for Brahman are these people here. They seek the Lord. They have that single pointed aim that I need to know my true nature, or I need to know the Lord. And in and through whatever I am doing, I am only purifying my mind to know that such people who have surrendered to the Lord, who have dropped their ego, who are ready to drop all attachments in that devotion for the Lord. He says, Mameva ye prapadyante. Whoever seeks me alone. There, remember, Mam, me, does not mean Krishna. Please. Enough people who misinterpret this shloka saying, see, Krishna said it. Whoever comes to me alone shall get liberation. So if you go to Shiva, you will not get liberation. Nobody else except Krishna will give you liberation. So come to Krishna alone. No. Mam here means Ishvara. Because that Krishna itself is an expression of that Maya's power, no? As a form. He is the Ishvara in this particular form as Krishna. And Ishvara only is all these forms. But in that form as Krishna or Rama, which is avatar, one is awake. One knows that this is, my nature is divine. In other forms, one is not awake. That's the only difference. So this doesn't mean Krishna. This means Ishvara. Any jiva who surrenders to Ishvara, and you know the beauty here is surrender has to happen only once, and sincerely it has to happen. The world is such that again and again we have to beg the world. Give me happiness, give me happiness, give me happiness, give me love, give me this, give me that, and still they will not give. And even if they give, they will give little bit. Bhagavan is such that only once one has to surrender. Vibhishan surrendered to the Lord only once. He did not have to go and tell Ramji again, please, will you accept me? Will you accept me? I surrender unto you. Will you accept me? Nothing. Once he went. Arjun surrendered to Sri Krishna only once. Bhagavan never makes an ego. Acha, now, so long to you never bothered about me. Now you are come because you are in trouble. जाओ भटको थोड़ा देर उसके बाद मेरे पास आओ. No. When he said Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam, that moment when he surrendered, knowledge Bhagavan started giving him. So many examples. Prahlad had to surrender once. He kept remembering the Lord all the time. So this surrender has to happen once, and sincerely we tell the Lord, oh Lord, I surrender unto you. That is the Gita in practice. We surrender to the Lord saying, ki Bhagavan, in our prayer one has to just surrender, or in quiet moments. Surrender that, oh totality, oh Lord, oh Ishvara. I drop my individuality. You alone are. Let thy will be done, not mine. Surrender to that Lord. In Bhakti Shastra, the example is given, a very beautiful example, is of a fisherman. So this fisherman casts his net in the lake. So this fisherman has actually come with another friend of his, and he and this friend both are discussing that, look, this is a very beautiful lake and there are lots of fish here, and we will capture the fish from here and take them away, and nice money we will make. So some of the fish, they are hearing this. They say, Arey, tomorrow he is going to come. He will capture all of us and go. What to do now? They all are very scared. There is one fish who says, don't worry. You can be safe. He says, no, it is not possible. You are deluded. You are going to die. And they all are very tense. So the one fish is very relaxed. Thinking, nothing will happen. Don't worry. And the next day this fisherman comes and he casts his net. And so many fish, they are all caught there. And this one fish who was very fearless is roaming about freely. Says, what happened? How did you become free? He said, see, it is so simple. I came near the feet of the fisherman. So the fishing net will not capture him. That was the way I was telling you, you can be free, but you didn't listen. Just come near the feet of this fisherman and you will be free. So that's the example given in the Bhakti literature, that those who surrender to the Lord, Maya doesn't touch them. What does that mean? Does it mean that they will never have rajas and tamas in life? Does it mean that they will never suffer in life? if we see, actually the devotees are persecuted much more than common people also. Prahlad's own father was trying to kill him. Vibhishan was branded as a traitor. So many of them. Devotees, if you see, Tukaram, one school of thought is Tukaram was murdered. But to cover all that up, people say that, when Viman came from Vaikuntha and took him away and all that. Actually, he was murdered. That's one very powerful school of thought. Because he was so popular and his devotion was so great, some of the people were jealous, killed him. So the point here is that it is not the devotee doesn't go through all the trials and tribulations we go through in the world, but they remain unaffected. That's what happens. Why? Because they live in the transcendental state where they are one with the Lord. So if tamas veils the truth in us, rajas projects the wrong entity, what helps us to get out of maya is sattva guna. That this bhava of surrender comes to us when we are sattvic. When the mind is filled with sattva guna, that mind automatically comes into the state of surrender. Rajoguna is the guna where the ego sustains itself because of Rajoguna. Because of ambition, because of greed, because of insecurity, because of attachment. Rajoguna makes the ego stronger and stronger. And of course Tamoguna, both. But it is Sattva guna which is the way out of Maya. And so we say that this Rajoguna and Tamoguna, they are called Avidya Maya. And Sattva guna is called as Vidya Maya. So Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to pray to the Lord, to Mother Kali, that, "O Mother Kali, please take away Avidya Maya from me and bless me with Vidya Maya so that I can seek you and surrender and I can be free from this grip of Maya." So if I cannot surrender completely and I have a lot of rajas and tamas in me right now, what should be my prayer? In the seat of meditation or in my prayer, I must always tell the Lord that, "O Lord, please bless me with Sattva guna. And may that Sattva guna help me to surrender." You think about it. Arjuna surrendered only when his rajas got exhausted. How many arguments he gave in the first chapter. And all that Rajoguna, when it is exhausted, he comes into that state of surrender. So our prayer should be that, "O Lord, help me to exhaust this rajas and increase Sattva guna." And the Lord is already doing that actually. We just have to open our eyes and see. The very fact that we are placed where we are and we have duties to do, we have work to perform, is a beautiful opportunity for us to exhaust our Rajoguna. That when I do that work, dedicating it to the Lord, that work no more binds me, that work becomes a means for me to remember the Lord, for me to cultivate Sattva guna. That person, when Sattva guna increases in life, automatically person will surrender. Because Sattva guna doesn't protect the ego. Sattva guna makes the ego very thin. And then only such a person, either through complete surrender in devotion or through contemplation, can drop the ego. So he says, "Mameva ye prapadyante." So that word "mam" can mean as a devotee, surrender to Ishvara, or as a seeker of knowledge, "mam" can mean a consciousness of the self. Seek that consciousness. As the consciousness, I am free from the persecution of thoughts, feelings, actions, and anything in the world outside. So, "Mameva ye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite." So, because we are in the portion of devotion, it is easier for us to take that interpretation, that seek surrender to that Ishvara. And pray to the Lord that, "O Lord, bring about that surrender by increasing Sattva guna in me. And by making me alert all the time that whatever I am doing, may I do it dedicated for a higher purpose, not for my ego." I'll end with this anecdote. Guru Nanak Sahib, he was very young, but devoted to the Lord. And his father had a provision store. So they used to sell various things. And he used to help out. So what happened once is that his father said, you take care, I will go, eat my lunch, have some rest and I will come back. Till then you manage. He said, okay. So somebody came there and they said, give me 15 share of something, he said, atta or whatever. So he started counting, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when he came to 13, as he was putting in and he said 13, he went into samadhi. Why? Because he said, everything belongs to you, O Lord. What belongs to me? Nothing belongs to me. So he went into samadhi. We may imagine weirdly samadhi means some kind of a mystic state and it becomes stiff and all that. What that meant was his mind was filled with the thoughts of the divine just at the thought 13. And that's why in our culture we don't consider number 13 as evil. In so many places there is no 13th floor also. But our culture 13 is divine. But it all belongs to him. Everything belongs to him. Including this body, mind, intellect, everything. So all the thoughts which come also come from the Lord. So for the devotee, there is no conflict at all. Whatever comes is surrender. Bhagavan, this is yours. Let thy will be done, not mine. In such a mind, will an evil thought even come? Our fear is, what if some evil thought comes to us? Surrender that to the Lord. Bhagavan, take it. So today we saw about Maya and how to cross Maya. Tomorrow we will conclude this chapter with 4 types of devotees and a few other things that the Lord says. We have a corporate workshop called Emotions at Work. And the idea is that how to lead with positive emotion. There are many emotions which come, which make us inefficient sometimes, or there are some emotions which we don't know how to handle. So emotions at work means 2 things. What are emotions at workplace and how do we learn to handle them? And second is emotions at work in our own personality. So this is a workshop we are doing on 13th of December and it's at Mayfair Rooms. You can just distribute this, please. The seats are very limited, 50 people only we will be taking. So if you have any company or if you yourself want to attend, it's a corporate workshop, you can send your company people, your employees, anybody. And along with me, this will be conducted by Dr. Abhash Rao. So you will have a spiritual perspective also and a medical perspective also. So both those aspects you can understand. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru